Hello and welcome. You're watching WION Climate Tracker. My name is Molly Gambhir. A quick look at what's lined up for you on the show. The winter season is on its way and it is predicted to be harsh for Europe, especially Germany. It is already battling a growing energy crisis. Cities are now turning off the lights at night. Public buildings, iconic landmarks, streets are dimming their lights after 11 p.m. The Germans are taking shorter showers and cooking less. In short, the country is trying to save energy as much as they can for the upcoming winter season, especially after the unpredictable weather events that it is facing right now. But there is some respite in sight. The natural gas storage facilities in the country have breached the level target, the 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Germany has surpassed a fill level of over 75% this month. The next targets are 85% by October 1st and 95% by the 1st of November. Now, the government is not sure if it will be enough for winter this year, and Germany's energy regulator has also warned that the country is likely to miss the November target, and it is highly unlikely to meet the October target as well. Like Germany, most European countries are rushing to fill up natural gas supplies after Russia significantly cut down natural gas supplies to Europe in recent weeks and soaring gas prices around Europe. Households across Germany will have to pay an extra $500 for gas per year, and just under half of the households are heated using gas, which is the most popular method by far in the country, and citizens have started panicking about the coming months. Temperatures dropped to as low as 0 degrees Celsius during the winter season in Germany. Frequent snowfall also accompanying that temperature. Experts have predicted that Germany is going to face Europe's biggest energy crisis in a generation. Germany's successful business model of the past decades was based on importing cheap energy, specifically oil and gas from Russia. Anyone who questioned this system was usually ignored. Now the German economy minister is begging Washington to get as much gas as possible, while others are turning to coal. Although coal prices have soared 30% this season, it remains cheaper than wood, the price of which has more than doubled. So maybe the black fuel will make a comeback in Europe's top economy. In fact, the German government has already resolved to increase the use of coal-fueled power plants in order to satisfy the appetites of the industries. However, Berlin insists it will keep its pledge to phase out the polluting energy source by 2030. Now, it remains to be seen how will the new German chancellor tackle the piling crises ahead of the winter season. On to China now. A sudden downpour triggered mudslides and caused floods in the northwestern part of the country. 16 people have lost their lives. Dozens are missing. Rescue teams are cleaning up the debris after floods uprooted trees and damaged houses. The floods occurred in a mountainous region of Datong County. It has affected more than 6,200 people from across 6 villages. The deluge coming during a summer of extreme weather events in China, with multiple cities clocking their hottest days on record. The visuals of the devastation published by the state media showing roads covered with mud, trees uprooted, damaged homes, rescue workers carrying equipment to clean up the debris. A frontline headquarters has been set up to organize the emergency response. Chinese authorities have warned that heavy rains are expected to hit the northern regions of the country, including the capital Beijing and its neighboring Tianjin and Hebei. Meanwhile, millions of people in southwest China are facing rolling power cuts after a crushing heat wave led to an electricity supply crunch and forced factories to halt work. Large parts of the country have been experiencing drought and grappling with the worst heat wave on record. Chinese planes are firing rods into the sky to bring more rainfall to its crucial Yangtze River, which has dried up in parts. Several regions on the Yangtze have launched weather modification programs. But with the cloud cover too thin, operations in some drought-ravaged parts of the river's basin have remained on standby. Central China's Hubei province became the latest to announce it would be seeding clouds using silver iodide rods in order to induce rainfall. The silver iodide rods, which are typically the size of cigarettes, are shot into existing clouds to help form ice crystals. The crystals then help the clouds produce more rain, making the moisture content heavier and more likely to be released. Cloud seeding has been in use since the 1940s, and China has the biggest cloud seeding program in the world. It used seeding ahead of the Beijing Olympics in 2008 to ensure dry weather for the event, and the technique can also be used to induce snowfall or to soften hail. The Ministry of Water Resources has warned that drought throughout the Yangtze River Basin will have adverse effects. It will affect the drinking water security of rural people and livestock and the growth of crops. The Yangtze is drying up and shrinking amid relentless heat and low rainfall. China is deploying such funds and developing new supply sources to deal with the impact on crops and livestock, and some livestock has been temporarily relocated to other regions. Swain Tøvdal, Director Klima 2020 and former UN Director, with me live from Norway on this. Thanks very much for being here. Droughts are not uncommon, but this year they are becoming harsher and longer, like what we are witnessing in China now. Tell us more about the driving forces.
Well, there is no doubt about the consensus amongst the scientists that what now is making heat waves and also, in a way, flooding, as you mentioned earlier in the program, stronger and wilder. That is the climate change and the increasing temperature on Earth. This is the fact. So what we see now, when the Earth has been 1.2 centigrades warmer since the Industrial Revolution, we see this now happening all over the world, in Europe, in the US, in China, as you mentioned. And be aware that this will only be worse, because it looks now that the temperature will increase rapidly and into a very dangerous level. So this is something we need to live with in the future, and of course we should do as much as we can as of now to limit the and stop the warming.
Let's talk about efforts like cloud seeding. Can the practice actually help lessen the impact of the drought in China? What are the drawbacks or the challenges as far as the process goes? Reports indicating that with the cloud cover too thin, operations in some parts have remained on standby in China.
Well, as you mentioned earlier in the program, China is probably the country in the world with the longest experience with this technology. We might call it geoengineering, and there is many ideas on how to use geoengineering to reduce the impact of global warming. As you see from what is happening in China now, it hasn't, in a way, had a big impact on solving the problem. And there is also a discussion around that there might be other consequences from using this technology. So I think what is needed, and there is not a kind of broad international research program that is working on it. So I think we have to be very careful. On the other hand, since the temperature is getting warmer and warmer, we have to do something with it. So in a way, it's good that this is experienced so that we can, in the future, maybe try to use the best available methods to reduce the damage from global warming. But so far, we have not been in a position to come up with something that is really working and where we know that the consequences is not negative. So it is not something that we can count on to solve our problem in the future.
Right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Moving on, the United Kingdom is facing a similar situation. It has been hit by thunderstorms and flash floods after prolonged heat and drought, and the latest victim is London. Visuals from around the capital showing commuters contending with deep pools of water on the roads. The Met Office issued both yellow and amber weather warnings for thunderstorms covering southeast England and South Wales. Rain filled the North London region, high streets of Stoke Newington and Stamford Hill, with cars seen struggling to drive through the water. London's Victoria station was partially flooded as several tube stations were forced to close after being overwhelmed by runoff from torrential rain. The Environment Agency has also issued 17 flood alerts across England, and more heavy rainfall is expected in England and Wales, with the most intense rain likely to fall in the southeast part covering London, Kent, West Sussex and Essex. Meanwhile, a total of 8 areas of England are officially under drought despite the downpour this week, with Thames Water becoming the latest water provider to announce a hosepipe ban. It will come into force later this month, and other rivers are dangerously low when it comes to the water levels. In some places, the fish has been relocated to stop them from dying in their dried out habitats. Our next report telling you more.
This was once a flowing river, home to healthy fish populations. But high temperatures and drought have dried up parts of the river more, leaving just murky pools of water. That's bad news for the fish population.
Going live.
So the UK Environment Agency has stepped in with a rescue plan. They're using an electrical current to stun the fish, so they can catch and relocate them to a stretch of the river with more water.
We've looked at every single other option. We can see that the levels aren't going to improve. Even though we've just had rain now, it's just not enough. And because of that, we then have to go to the ultimate stage, which is removing the fish and rescue them and moving to another place.
Moving them down the river is risky. Some won't survive the journey. But with oxygen levels too low and temperatures too high in these pools, they would die here anyway. The team has pulled a lot of tiddlers from the water as well as this huge pipe. They're all placed into oxygenated tanks to improve their chances of survival.
I'll just keep him on top of the oxy for a while.
Rivers across the UK are suffering in the heat. On the Welsh-English border, the River Drought is drying up too. It's a tributary of the River Wye. Citizen scientists are testing pollution levels here. They've become more concentrated due to the lack of water.
With our regular phosphate testing being often 10, 20 times the target levels, it's become, quite distressing. The river doesn't have time to wait. It just needs to happen now.
It's been raining this week and more downpours are expected over the next few days. But they won't be enough to replenish the depleted rivers. So fish habitats are not safe yet. And the waterways face long-term problems that will last longer than this hot, dry summer. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Bangladesh falls in the low-lying region touching the Bay of Bengal, which means monsoon seasons are extremely harsh in the country, and this year was a testimony to that. Riverbanks collapsed, houses were inundated, hundreds were forced to abandon their lands. The monsoon season began in June and is going to continue till October. Bangladesh, being a land of rivers, destruction knows no bounds. Within 3 months, the 130 rivers have changed their course. The water has entered houses, markets, schools and mosques.
অনেক লোক ছিল, অনেক ঘরদুয়ার ছিল, এখন কোনো অনেক বড় একটা পরিশোধ ছিল তাও নাই। তা মনে করেন সবকিছু নদীতে ভাঙ্গা মানুষে একজনে একদিকে চলে গেছে, কেউ বেরির পাশে মাছা পাইতে থাকতেছে, কেউ মনে করেন ভাড়া ঘরে থাকতেছে, কেউ এমনি টঙ্গের মতন পাইতে থাকতেছে, বেরির সাইডে সাইডে এরকম মিলে এখন থাকতেছে। তাই আমি মনে করেন ঢাকায় চলে আসছি। আমাদের অনেক লোকজন ছিল, এখন বর্তমান ওখানে কোনো দেশই নাই আর লোকও নাই, এখন শুধু নদীই দেখা যাচ্ছে, আর কোনো লোকজন দেখা যাচ্ছে না। শুধু নদী, নদীতে লঞ্চ চলে, ট্রলার চলে, স্টিমার চলে, জাহাজ চলে, তারপরে মাছ মারে নদীতে। এই অবস্থা এখন মনে করেন আমাদের বাড়ির উপরে এগুলা চলতেছে, এখন আর আমাদের বাড়ি নেই।
Like other climate disasters, poorer neighborhoods are badly impacted. Many belonging to the low-income households have been forced to shift to the cities, where the cost of living is extremely high.
তিনবার ভাঙছে, অনাবারে একবার চারবার। এই ঘরবাড়ি হরাইতে আছি আমরা, ঘরবাড়ি লিয়া কইছেন থাও মাঙ্গো সেই কোনো স্থান নাই। নদীতে মাছ নাই, নদীতে জাল বাইতে গেছে, আমরা কোনো খাবার খাইতে পারি না, কোনো কাপড় চোপড় কিনতে পারি না, কিছু করতে পারি না। ছেলে মানে নদী নালায় যায়, কি করা যাইব? আপনি সরকারে যদি একটু কিছু লাইন করতো আমাদের তো আমার।
The floods have left behind a trail of misery and destruction. About 131 people have lost their lives. The World Bank released an alarming report. It says that Bangladesh is expected to have more than 19 million internal climate refugees by 2050. This is almost half the projected number for the entire South Asian region. Bees are extremely crucial for our ecosystem, so much so that a third of the world's food production depends on them. So naturally, a decline in their population should worry us. What is the reason behind this? Our next report breaking it down for you.
It seems like on years that are generally hotter and a bit wetter, we found that the wings are more different on the same bee. So this kind of could be an indicator that bees maybe had a bit more stress in those years that were hotter and wetter. Be careful not to extrapolate too much, because of course there could have been other things that were contributing to this difference in shape, but given climate change and given that we're predicted to have a lot more hot weather, I think we could be a bit worried about how bees are doing in the future.
And the Netherlands is struggling with droughts at the moment. This summer is among the driest ones since 1901. Despite rainfall and water-saving measures by the government, the problems caused by the drought are mounting. And it will have to rain heavily throughout the Netherlands for weeks now to bring the groundwater back up to standard levels, which does not seem likely according to experts. While Dutch households were finding it hard to get their basic water needs met, a group of volunteers is trying to save fish from drying up rivers. Our next report telling you more.
This is a dried-up lake in the east of the Netherlands. Recreational fishing volunteers are throwing some slime-coated fish into buckets. But it's not the kind of catch they're used to. These people are trying to save the fish from drying up lakes. Each fish will then be moved nearby to the river Isle, a Dutch branch of the drought-hit river Rhine, which was recently fed with fresh water.
Yes, you have seen that quite right, because it's so dry in the Netherlands at the moment. Fish get isolated in puddles, mainly in the lakes near the rivers. And they dry up, so the fish gets in trouble. And we try to save as many of them as we can, using all our equipment, volunteers, mainly volunteers, very important. So that's a daily business at the moment.
The Netherlands is famed as the land of water. The canals and dikes protect against rising seas, but the country has declared an official water shortage. And one key factor in the drought is the low water level in the Rhine. Europe's mighty river rises in Switzerland and flows through several countries, including France and Germany, before flowing into the sea in a huge delta in the Netherlands. But the river water in the Netherlands is receding. Dry and parched banks are now exposed along other Dutch distributaries of the Rhine. The water in the small lake near the town of Giesbeek used to be a meter higher, but it is now down to about 10 centimeters. Volunteers from a number of angling clubs have now carried out several missions to help the stranded fish alongside the Dutch Water Management Ministry. The ministry official is surprised by the size of the catch, which is around 2,000 kilos. Even though these fish might get saved, not everyone will be able to escape the effects of climate change.
It's terrible for wildlife also, not only for the fish but also for the birds and for everything. You need water.
A year ago, dramatic floods in the same area left a trail of damage in the Netherlands, and there isn't enough water despite a brief downpour before the fish rescue expedition. The Netherlands has barely seen any rain for months. While headlines about the Rhine's low water levels have focused on Germany, the Dutch point out that they are also suffering.
Yeah, we pray for rain and we do what we can. And this is also one of a job what we can do. And the telephone is red. Now I can also two message to this morning that another part of Holland is also the same problem than here.
All the water through the Rhine River flows through the Netherlands. As most of the countries upstream face drought, it has come down to the Dutch too. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
While the Dutch government is trying to save fish, Florida is encouraging its citizens to hunt pythons. The Burmese pythons are now considered an invasive species, one that poses a threat to Florida's ecosystem. The Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission is now holding a 10-day python hunting contest. Do they really harm our environment? What is this all about? Our next report telling you more. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching.
One would think that python hunting is dangerous business, and it is. But for Enrique Galan, it has now become a form of therapy.
All right.
When he's not at his day job, Enrique finds himself hunting down Burmese pythons for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
The pythons have left a great impact, negative impact in the environment here. It's very clear. Where once there were thousands of animals, now it's eerily quiet. It's like a ghost town. It's a desert. It's an animal desert as a consequence of the pythons.
For the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, this is an effective way of controlling python populations. Once brought to Florida as pets, the python population has grown in number and invaded wetland ecosystems, resulting in significant damage. It's a symbiotic relationship. Enrique gets paid to hunt down pythons and also a window to escape life, while the Wildlife Commission is able to keep the population under control.
People think that you can just release an animal that doesn't belong somewhere and that there won't be any consequences. They figure, what's one snake gonna do? But if a lot of people are releasing their pet snakes, I mean, you can just have a catastrophe, but so many people just don't know about it.
There's a larger issue here, the obsession with acquiring so-called exotic animals, even ones that are just not meant to be domesticated. And the adverse impact of this practice is all too evident here in Florida, where the wetlands are terrorized by this slithering predator.
I've been waiting like almost 2 years, volunteering, not getting paid. But it's just been a pleasure every day going out with these guys. And it really helped me through a lot of stuff. Struggling at home, insomnia, I can't sleep at night. And, having someone to go out and 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning to go out and catch pythons is something productive, good. And, it's really helped out a lot.
The Florida Wildlife Commission will also be hosting a 10-day hunting event with 800 people participating. The prize? $2,500 for whoever finds and kills the most pythons in each of the categories, professional and amateur hunter. While this may prove to be effective, perhaps relocation and rehabilitation would have been a less cruel option. Bureau Report WION, World is One.